I have a bald head, right? But if you know anything about bald-headed men, I think I'm fascinated with hair, right? I live vicariously through other people and their hair. I envy hair. I hate to say it.
Listen.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Keefe, editor-in-chief of The Quintessential Gentleman, and today we are talking to actor Mike Colter. He is a hero from Marvel's Luke Cage, but also a villain of Girls Trip, and starred in many other many other films.
Wow.
How are you?
I gotta retract that statement. I mean, villain. Wait a minute. He was just a misunderstood man. I don't understand the spin on that one. Wait a minute. No. He was misunderstood. Double cross is what he was. Double
I
cross.
see that. I see that. But more importantly, my favorite. I love Luke Cage, but also my favorite was your portrayal in The Good Fight and The Good Wife. That
Oh yeah, good fight, good wife. Yeah. Those guys are great writers. Love the Kings. I worked with them on Evil last show I just did. They're wrapped up. They're just a good writing group. Really interesting ideas, and they just have really a nice, interesting, and also very subtle way of telling their stories, which I really appreciate because I think a lot of times people are into telling stories, but also doing it in a style that is sort of soapy, over melodramatic, and I just think they're really subtle sometimes. And I do like that approach.
yeah, and the character like there were so many nuances to him, right? It wasn't just he's a drug dealer or he's a bad. It's like you understand kind of his business mind and things like that. It was really dope to see.
Yeah, I really thought that what was interesting about him. So I never thought of him as a drug dealer, because he had so many different endeavors, so many different places where he made money. I thought that was obviously the most attractive, most appealing, sensational part of his character because he had this world where he was like, yeah, a lot of his money's invested in drugs, but he owned businesses, dry cleaning businesses, horse stables. He had so many different investments, but I thought it was an interesting character because I look at him as a businessman. And so anytime he was in a room, I didn't think he felt or stuck out like this guy's from another world or the other side of the block, which is why I liked him because I played him like a kind of guy who has an MBA, which just diversified his portfolio. So that's how I like to approach him.
I agree. I agree. And he also just walked in with so much like power. Like he knew who he was. He knew what he wasn't going to deal with. And I think that authority over a lot of the white people essentially, because it was a whole bunch of white people around him. It was really dope to see on TV for sure.
Yeah. Being in a room with people who are expecting something from you, and you don't necessarily give it to them because you're so calm and so completely sure of yourself and what you can do and what you won't tolerate, and also you understood the leverage. I think what people don't remember or don't realize sometimes, and I think this happens for a lot of people, when someone works for you, you have a different way of dealing with them. And I think a lot of people don't get that. A lot of people forget. We think sometimes people are working for us, but we behave as if we're working for them. It's an insane thing. But people, if you pay attention to it, there are a lot of people who fall into that trap. They're paying someone for a service, but the person somehow treats them as if it's the other way around, and they also fall into that role easily. And so before you realize it, wait a minute, who's working for who? And I think a lot of us, black, white, doesn't matter. All of us sort of fall into that thing because we just have a certain personality. This personality that's deferring and the person and an inferiority complex.
Yeah.
And having an inferiority complex will allow you to pay someone to do a service, and you also will end up doing the service that you're paying them to do for you. So
Wow. Do
yeah,
you see that a lot? I'm talking specifically in your industry, like actors and things like that who have these teams around them, may it be managers,
absolutely,
agents, publicists.
absolutely,
Really?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I see it all the time, and it doesn't shock me because especially as an actor when you're starting out, I think people don't realize the struggle that actors deal with. So at some point when you're starting to be successful, your team not won't necessarily they will treat you a different way. But if you're not conscious of it yourself, you forget that, yeah, now you're actually making money. They're making money off of you. they work for you on your behalf. So in essence, you're kind of their boss. I don't throw the word around boss around because I don't think I'm anybody's boss, but there is a pecking order because at the end of the day, they're providing a service for you. And if you're not happy with them, you can fire them. You can move on. So in essence, they do work for you. It's a relationship. I like to say we all work together. We are a
Right.
team. But yeah, they do work for me, and I don't forget that, because if you forget that, you're going to constantly be, deferring and sort of apologizing for what you want, what you need, what you think should be done, and also holding people accountable is another thing. Like holding people accountable, because that's the tough part about being anybody's, boss. You know.
Yeah. It's interesting. I remember the gentleman from the game. They have a podcast. I think it's Hosea's podcast, and they were talking about how their teams there's like a challenge with them speaking on behalf of them and speaking differently, not as if the person who was at, and they're like, that's a challenge. Like, I need you
Uh,
to speak to these people as if you were me, not speaking in your own
oh,
kind
sure,
of.
sure, sure. Well, there's I call it lawyer talk and agent talk.
Mm,
And I found it before, and I've had to have conversations with people um, very candidly about how I would handle it. And sometimes the way I'm going to handle it isn't going to be the way they want to handle it. But I stress to them, this is exactly what I want you to say to them, because there has been some miscommunication. Sometimes you go back and forth, go back and forth. And I like to cut to the chase. I'm a person I'm pretty direct. And I think people like to negotiate about a lot of things. And I think they love the back and forth of it all. That's what they do. They like the back and forth. They like to suggest something and then come back to you and find out what your offer is. And they just like to go back and forth. I just like to set up the best and final right away. That's
yeah.
me. I know what it is, and I think they know what it is. So I just like to just do that. So we can't reach that, then we move on, because the back and forth it's also sort of I think it's a little exhausting, and it does get petty, and I just think it's no need for it. So I do sometimes tell my team, no, I need you to use these words,
Mhm.
because these words will be more effective, and you can say, I said so,
Yeah.
if you're having an issue with how you're going to say it.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Well, we jumped into it into this business
Yeah,
conversation. This is great. Well, just like kind of bringing into it now. You were talking about your new kind of business venture that you have, which is a new hair care line that you have with your wife Eva that you guys both kind of created. Can you talk to me? Well, I want to say one, why, as someone, it doesn't, you haven't really done hair
yeah.
care, looking at your,
No, no, yeah, no hair, right?
what really did start the interest in Niles and Chaz, which is the name of the hair care line, which is also the name of your daughters.
Yeah, the interest was, I think it was born out of a need, a necessity to find products that were specifically for children with multicultural, ethnicity, biracial, however you want to describe it, a
Mhm.
texture of hair that isn't just, one thing. Like, if you look at it, the world is becoming a large place that's filled with so many different diverse people. My
Mhm.
daughters are just an example of that. Even
Mhm.
between my two daughters, they have different hair. One hair is a little more coarse than the other.
Mhm.
Their hair responds differently. So finding a product that addresses multiple hair types was difficult, and I think it was a trial and error. We tried so many different things. Some of those things worked in one facet and for one thing, but there are products that they had that didn't work for this other thing. So out of frustration, I think my daughter just said it one day. She was like, my wife was complaining about it. And she said, "Well, mom, why don't we just make our own?" That's what an 8-year old. I think she was 8 at the time. That's what 8-year olds do, because it makes sense to them. Why don't we just make our own? And
Yeah.
out of that audacity, we were like, oh, yeah, I mean, I guess we could. I mean, that's what it turned into, because it's like, why not? And I think there's always a why not factor for anyone, but in particular in our situation, it was a why not thing, because we did have contacts and resources and things, and we kind of thought, well, you know, it would make sense, and it's a space in the market. Why not? So that's where it started. And my wife is a big research fanatic. She went to school for doing. She had a doctorate in comparative literature, which
Mhm.
basically means you spend a lot of time in the library, a lot of
Right.
time researching things, writing a dissertation for her thesis or for her final project. So she's got a brain that works that way. So she did all this due diligence. She went and found products that kind of worked, but not quite. She compared notes. She did research to figure out what things could be put into it. Also, what kind of product did we want to have? We wanted something
Yeah.
that was clean for kids, right? There's this world is changing now, so we got to find things that are sustainable, that are good for children to put on their skin and hair, smells good,
Mhm.
also fun because it's a kid's brand, but it really goes beyond that. We like to say it's like I say 5 years and beyond as a
Right.
terminology for children, 5 years and beyond, because it works on adult hair too. It works on my daughter, my two daughters, my sister, who has a much coarser hair type. It's like a curl 4C, I believe. So
Mhm.
natural. So when you put the hair out and you take any sort of braids or anything out, no kind of processing. This accentuates what your hair naturally does. We have obviously something that's really unique in our brand. We have a scalp treatment which helps to clean the scalp in between braiding and this other stuff they like to do to our hair, right? We have a curl enhancer. We came up with products that would basically help everyone. So that's where it started. It started out of necessity and frustration with what was currently on the market.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll just kind of go into the products. I know you have a Tangles, Shemangles, detangler and curl enhancer. You have the curl razor, a revival spray, what the frizz, which is a styling gel cream, and then a scalp and enchanter, which is a pre-shampoo scalp treatment that you were referencing.
Yeah,
When you all were creating these products, what was kind of the trajectory of like starting with one and then kind of moving into the other ones?
that's a good question. I mean, I think the first thing we considered or first thing we thought about, I think it was a Tangles detangling product first. And then I think the other ones came about. I think the scalp treatment probably, I feel like that's the curveball because it's not one that you initially think about when it comes to hair care, but
Mhm.
we went through all of the products that we would like to have had available
Mhm.
to us.
Right.
And going back to me, I have a bald head, right? But if you know anything about bald headed men, I think I'm fascinated with hair, right? I live vicariously through other people and their hair. I envy hair. I hate to say it. I say, yeah, you know what, man? I look at that hair. I wish I had. So when I see my daughters, they have great hair, but I also want their hair to be at its best.
Yeah.
Because they have such great hair. I do see people sometimes with hair. Now I'm more sensitive to it. I pay more attention. But I see people with such wonderful, beautiful hair, but they don't have product that accentuates it, that brings it to its fullest, right? So if they had it, their hair would just be top notch. So I look at my daughters the same way. I go, I'm vain, right? I find stuff for myself, whether it's my beard oil or whether it's something that I trim my hair with or shave with. They have
Right.
great hair. There's no point in walking out looking like they're not doing their best. And I think that's something that kids who are of their demographic suffer from because they're overlooked in the market. The market's
Mhm.
growing exponentially, and it's not really targeted or addressed in a big major way. So we wanted to jump in because it just has to be. It's room for it. There's room for it there.
Yeah. So you talk about your wife doing a lot of the research. I know that a lot of your products are plant-based and all natural ingredients. How difficult was it to kind of make sure that that was the space that you were in and that you had those items to be able to create the perfect product?
It's still an ongoing struggle because the packaging is really interesting. If you look at it, it's very colorful, it's eye catching, it's head turning. You look at it, it's a very fun packaging, right? My daughters were instrumental in picking out colors because my daughters are little artists. They go to art class. They love to draw and paint. So we
Yeah.
took their input there. But in doing so, we try to stay away from plastics. Well, aluminum is the next, that's the next best option because that's really recyclable and it doesn't leave a huge imprint on the planet, right? The
Right.
housing, the bamboo housing. The only thing is it's recyclable is the pump. It's still recyclable, but there's no other option besides the plastic pump, which is recyclable. But we can't. We're trying to find another option for that. But we're trying to think forward because, and we're even looking at refillables down the road. So that it's
Mhm.
very difficult because anytime you try to do something that's not what everyone else is doing,
Yeah.
the amount of things that are available to you, the costs is also going to be different. So it's never easy to try to do the right thing. It's almost like people go, well, is it healthy to eat well? Sure, but sometimes people make it more expensive to eat well. But to my point, what is it's just like health, right? If you eat well now, you're taking care of yourself, and you can stay away from prescription drugs down the road, right? because what they say, food is either food is your medicine, or you'll make medicine your food, right? So you have to just think about the long term effect. You're going to spend the money at some point, right? And it just depends on what's your priority. How do you want to do it? So I look at this as the same way. If you do, I think our products are very effective. And I think when people are looking for products, sometimes they buy things multiple times because it's not effective. And they also keep trying different things because it's not effective. So they're consistently, you know, using resources in an effort to find the right product. Once you find your product, I find that you'll spend less time, which is also money, and you'll spend less money because you know exactly what you're looking for, and you know exactly how much, and you know exactly what it takes and how effective it can be. So it seems like a long journey, but I think it also helps in the long run.
Yeah. And I think, also at a certain age, you become brand loyal, right? If it works,
Yeah,
you constantly use it and you just buy
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. We do. I think our demographic of whether it's the tweeners or whatever it is, that age group of the between teenagers and adolescents, somewhere in there, you know,
Mhm.
they are really big into what they present like. They want to have certain things, and there's a limit because I don't want my daughters being fast fixated on the externals at all times.
Yeah.
But I think hair is confidence. I think people overlook how much more confidence people have when they have their hair in the right place. It's like a guy going to get a haircut, right? You walk in the barbershop, different dude, a
Yeah.
different dude.
So I wonder, and I guess I don't have any kids, but I would probably think that at this day and age, the younger demographic care more about their looks than I did or you did, just because of social media as a part of it, right? But
Yeah,
it's kind of like now it's you gotta look a certain way, or they want to look a certain way. It's looking like this person, their friend, or whatever the case may be. But I remember, you got what your parents gave you, right? In terms of
you
hair.
use yeah, you use whatever's in the medicine cabinet, or you also just I mean, at best, I think there was CVS or Rite Aid.
Yeah,
We there I don't know about beauty supply stores back when I was a kid. I mean, we just had limited resources, but we also had a limited awareness of what worked. If my dad or my brother wasn't using it, I mean, there was nothing for kids. Like
yeah,
there was just nothing marketed for kids. It was like you got whatever was on the cabinet, and you know, especially for hair, it's like, well, yeah, I wanted Sport and Wave, right, or Dax or whatever it was, or Murray's. But I
yeah.
had hair. This back in the day when I had waves and stuff. But if you didn't have that, you'd have to use Vaseline. You'd have to use petroleum jelly. That was what you used. You just use whatever you got your hands on.
Thank gosh those days are gone.
Yeah, yeah.
But how has the transition been from, acting and that industry, and then now being inside this hair care industry? One, because of you being male, which is not a male dominated industry. That's one part of it. And then two, you have more of understanding more of the business side of the grooming industry as a whole, or the beauty industry as a whole.
Yeah, I think about it from the standpoint of like it's another endeavor. I always told my wife, it's not like it's not an easy brand to associate with me, right?
Mhm.
But I look at it as this is a girl dad thing, right? Daughters are important to dads. When we spend time with them, we do cherish those moments. It's a very important time for us with our daughters, right? But I also
Mhm.
look at it from the standpoint of like it's a brand that's led first and foremost by the children. It's a children's brand. It's like Niles and Chaz is the name of it, but if you look at our website, we have a multitude of children on there, different diverse backgrounds. Um, we look at it as it's going to be a user generated content brand, because if the kids love it, they'll post about it, they'll talk about it, they'll show what the before and afters. It's really about them celebrating their own curls, celebrating their own identity, celebrating themselves, and having something for themselves. So even though it's not specifically my attached to the type of brand that I would be associated with, it's a seamless transition because my daughters and I are girl dad and children. It's a children's brand that
Yeah.
is predicated on the father daughter relationship, and also this children's identity and also their confidence. Being seen. So that's how I felt like it was an organic thing. There wasn't a hard sell for me when I thought about it. I was like, okay, and I didn't really want my daughters necessarily being out there because they had never really been on social media at all. So to have a
Mhm.
website that was dedicated sort of for their brand, I had to think about that a bit. And it's okay, but eventually, yeah, they'll be on social media maybe one time at some point in their life when they're much older. But
Right.
it was a big concern. But I think about it from the standpoint of it's about the children and it's a children's brand in totality. I think it's okay, and because they're not, it's not just about them.
Yeah. No, I get it. I get it. What's the hardest part about being a girl dad?
Well, I think the hardest part of being a girl dad is just it's just I think the emotions they just have a different set of emotions, and obviously being young is part of it. Being they're still developing, they're still trying to figure out who they are.
Mhm.
They are competitive, I think, for my attention. I
Mhm.
think that's the hardest part, trying to make sure I give attention to both of them, because they also want their own separate time. It's not just about spending time with both of them; they want to spend time individually. So when I can, I try to do that because it just means a lot to them. I think trying to be a a a dad that is giving them structure and being firm and having a little bit of discipline, but we have fun. I think that's the hardest part. It's like, well, maybe for them, not for me. I can switch up I can switch up easy. I can switch up being playing and hanging out, we having a good time laughing, to turn it into like, oh, you better chill out because this is gonna happen. Like I'm
Yeah.
quick to switch from disciplinary to playing in a minute. To them, it might
Yeah.
be confusing, but I think they got used to it because at the same time, I'm like, we can have a good time, but you gotta do what's right. So I do believe that it's a balance, but I'm pretty good at switching, because I do love my
Yeah.
daughters and I have a soft spot for them, but I would be doing them a disservice if I allowed them to just walk all over me or to just be give into everything they want, because that's a tough one. That tough thing is like spoiling them. It's just you're not doing them a service. So it's hard. It's hard, but I know and down the road they'll appreciate it, and I know I will also hopefully appreciate that I did draw some boundaries in terms of how I dealt with them.
And I'm assuming that going through this process was definitely time carved out for you all to be together, trying the products, designing it. You said their art that definitely kind of helped with bringing some time together with the family as a whole, right?
Yeah, yeah, but work can be, it's a when you're doing a think tank or when you're trying to figure out what to do, all those things sometimes can be intense. And
Mhm.
I do think that there's much, just hanging out and spending time doing other things that are sort of more casual or better ways to spend. I mean, this is nice to have this thing with them, but my
Yeah,
daughters can get exhausted too because sometimes it's work. Doing social, all this stuff. It's a job. It's fun. We try to make it fun, but there are kids, so sometimes when we're doing stuff with them, obviously we are trying to be cognizant and aware of the amount of time that we're spending with them trying to create content or trying to do things that are around the business, because we don't want to make it unfun. We don't want to suddenly make this feel like a job. We want to keep it light, fun. So we try to make sure we limit the amount of time we have in doing this kind of stuff with them.
yeah. Understood, understood. So where do you see the brand going in the next couple years? What would you like for it to be?
We want to grow it somewhat slowly, and by slowly we want to use we want to use I would say a grassroots approach. Obviously, we want to start in a market that's specifically targeting our demographic in certain locations. Obviously, we want to grow our D2C, our online community. We're obviously on Amazon now. We want to grow so people can eventually just sample the product and tell people word of mouth that this is good. We want people to like it, to your point, to become loyal
Mhm.
to the brand and to spread the word and to share their their experiences with other people who are also looking for something like this. It's a very slow but very conscious decision on how to do it, because we're not trying to be all things to all people. We want to
Yeah.
find our audience and we want our audience to find us, and it's going to take time, but we're planning on doing that. So the next, we would love to be obviously on the shelves and in retailers in the next year or so. But right
Mhm.
now, we just want to be have a presence online and grow organically with our customer base, and hopefully our customer base will follow us and come to our website and share their testimonials and tag us.
Awesome, awesome. And what advice do you have for fathers who are, will probably be interested in, kind of creating some things with their kids, just maybe from an entrepreneurial perspective, and specifically kind of like the younger children. What advice would you give them?
It's always an idea, right? It starts with an idea. The idea, I think, has to be married to passion. Like, it's
Hmm.
not one thing is to have an idea, another thing to have the idea, but also have the desire to execute. Because not everything that we can think of or conceptualize is going to be something that works for us or works for your lifestyle or something that you can get behind. And so that's the thing. It's like don't pay attention to what your children say. Also, pay attention to what they gravitate towards, what they're inspired by, what makes them happy, what they light up with, what just fascinates them. Those
Hmm.
things are things that as parents we have to sort of pay attention to because that could be the avenue, that could be the lane in which your child may be in for the rest of their lives. Because once you find your passion, you spend the rest of your life trying to get better at it, to develop that thing, to figure out how to harness your talents and your abilities, and it's a lifetime journey. So whether it's you as a parent who encourages this or you discover it, pay attention because your children are always giving you signals. And a lot of times, I think as parents, we ignore those signals. I think I've seen it with other parents. I hope I haven't done it to my own children, but I've seen it with other parents. I don't know when I was a kid, me wanting to be an actor. That's just one thing, right? My parents didn't say no. They didn't discourage me. They didn't necessarily try to cultivate it. They weren't like, hey, let's go move to another city. Let's pursue this. That's not what they did. But they didn't discourage me either. And you have to find out what you can do to encourage and to support your kid. You know what I mean? Not everybody's going to respond to discouragement with this "I'll show you" mentality, and it's me against the world. Not everybody's going to do that. I would say it would be the opposite. I think most people will be discouraged and they will fold without encouragement. I think
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to have encouragement, but also a tolerance from my family that whatever I wanted to do with my life wasn't crazy. And also being the baby of the family, maybe it wasn't so much, I wasn't the oldest, so the pressure wasn't on me to succeed, maybe, or to be something specifically. So just be careful how you talk to your children. Pay attention to what they're saying, see what interests them, and see how you can encourage that. Because down the road, man, it's horror stories. Down the road, your child might be very, very successful, but you don't want it to be at the expense of your relationship with your child. You don't want to
Hmm.
be the person that, sure, your child became successful, despite you saying they would never become successful, or despite you telling them that that's the worst idea you've ever heard. You don't want to be that parent. So,
Yeah.
so just be careful how you talk to your children and listen to them because listening really goes a long way.
Yeah. Awesome, awesome. And my last question for you is a personal question. It's going to be: did you get the call from Marvel to enter into the MCU?
No, people ask me that all the time. I wish somebody would just call Kevin Feige. People ask me all the time, if I had $1, I mean, people are like, hey, man, I'm like, does Kevin Feige not ever leave the house? Is
Yeah.
he the person? Does he ever, does he have social media? Can somebody just blow him up? Because
Yeah.
if I had $1 for every time. And if, sure, maybe, and if he did call me or we have a conversation, I probably couldn't tell you anyway. But yeah,
Yep.
it's crazy. It's crazy that people just, I would tell them, and B, that Feige couldn't just answer the question because it's either yes or no, and I don't know.
Yep.
I haven't heard anything.
Yep. Okay. All right. I believe that or not believe that. Got it. All right. Thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate the conversation. And this was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Nice talking to you.